saucers, silver spoons, and silver teapot were brought forth, shining and bright, spread on a rich Persian carpet, and observed that I was well attended to by my yellow and ebon Mercuries. This was the beginning of our life at Ujiji. I knew him not as a friend before my arrival. He was only an object to me, a great item for a daily newspaper, as much as other subjects in which the voracious, news-loving public delight in. I had gone over battlefields, witnessed revolutions, civil wars, rebellions, emeutes, and massacres, stood close to the condemned murderer to record his last struggles and last sighs, but never had I been called to record anything that moved me so much as this man's woes and sufferings, his privations and disappointments which now were poured into my ear. Verily did I begin to perceive that the gods above do with just eyes survey the affairs of men. I began to recognize the hand of an overruling and kindly providence. The following are singular facts worthy for reflection. I was commissioned for the duty of discovering Livingstone sometime in October 1869. Mr. Bennet was ready with the money, and I was ready for the journey. But observe, reader, that I did not proceed directly upon the search mission. I had many tasks to fulfill before proceeding with it, and many thousand miles to travel over. Supposing that I had gone direct to Zanzibar from Paris, 7 or 8 months afterwards, perhaps I should have found myself at Ujiji, but Livingstone would not have been found there then. He was on the Lualaba, and I should have had to follow him on his devious tracks through the primeval forests of Manyuema, and up along the crooked course of the Lualaba for hundreds of miles. The time taken by me in travelling up the Nile, back to Jerusalem, then to Constantinople, southern Russia, the Caucasus, and Persia, were employed by Livingstone in fruitful discoveries west of the Tanganyika. Again, consider that I arrived at Unyanyembe in the latter part of June, and that owing to a war I was delayed 3 months at Unyanyembe, leading a fretful, peevish, and impatient life. But while I was thus fretting myself and being delayed by a series of accidents, Livingstone was being forced back to Ujiji in the same month. It took him from June to October to march to Ujiji. Now, in September, I broke loose from the thraldom which accident had imposed on me, and hurried southward to Unkonogo, then westward to Kawendi, then northward to Uvinza, then westward to Ujiji, only about 3 weeks after the doctor's arrival, to find him resting under the veranda of his house, with his face turned eastward, the direction from which I was coming. Had I gone direct from Paris on the search, I might have lost him. Had I been enabled to have gone direct to Ujiji from Unyanyembe, I might have lost him. The days came and went peacefully and happily under the palms of Ujiji. My companion was improving in health and spirits. Life had been brought back to him. His fading vitality was restored. His enthusiasm for his work was growing up again into a height that was compelling him to desire to be up and doing. But what could he do with 5 men and 15 or 20 cloths? "Have you seen the northern head of the Tanganyika, Doctor?" I asked one day. "No, I did try to go there, but the Wajiji were doing their best to fleece me, as they did both Burton and Speke, and I had not a great deal of cloth. If I had gone to the head of the Tanganyika, I could not have gone to Manyuema. The central line of drainage was the most important, and that is the Lualaba. Before this line, the question whether there is a connection between the Tanganyika and the Albert Nyanza sinks into insignificance. The great line of drainage is the river flowing from latitude 11 degrees south, which I followed for over 7 degrees northward. The Chambezi, the name given to its most southern extremity, drains a large tract of country south of the southernmost source of the Tanganyika. It must therefore be the most important. I have not the least doubt myself but that this lake is the upper Tanganyika, and the Albert Nyanza of Baker is the lower Tanganyika, which are connected by a river flowing from the upper to the lower. This is my belief, based upon reports of the Arabs, and a test I made of the flow with water plants, but I never really gave it much thought. Well, if I were you, Doctor, before leaving Ujiji, I should explore it, and resolve the doubts upon the subject, lest, after you leave here, you should not return by this way. The Royal Geographical Society attach much importance to this supposed connection, and declare you are the only man who can settle it. If I can be of any service to you, you may command me. Though I did not come to Africa as an explorer, I have a good deal of curiosity upon the subject, and should be willing to accompany you. I have with me about 20 men who understand rowing. We have plenty of guns, cloth, and beads, and if we can get a canoe from the Arabs, we can manage the thing easily. Oh, we can get a canoe from Said bin Majid. This man has been very kind to me, and if ever there was an Arab gentleman, he is one. Then it is settled, is it, that we go? I am ready, whenever you are. I am at your command. Don't you hear my men call you the Great Master, and me the Little Master? It would never do for the Little Master to command. By this time, Livingstone was becoming known to me. I defy any one to be in his society long without thoroughly fathoming him, for in him there is no guile, and what is apparent on the surface is the thing that is in him. I simply write down my own opinion of the man as I have seen him, not as he represents himself, as I know him to be, not as I have heard of him. I lived with him from the 10th November, 1871, to the 14th of March, 1872, witnessed his conduct in the camp and on the march, and my feelings for him are those of unqualified admiration. The camp is in the best place to discover a man's weaknesses, where, if he is flighty or wrong-headed, he is sure to develop his hobbies and weak side. I think it possible, however, that Livingstone, with an unsuitable companion, might feel annoyance. I know I should do so very readily, if a man's character was of that oblique nature that it was an impossibility to travel in his company. I have seen men in whose company I felt nothing but a thraldom, which it was a duty to my own self-respect to cast off as soon as possible, a feeling of utter incompatibility, with whose nature mine could never assimilate. But Livingstone was a character that I venerated, that called forth all my enthusiasm, that evoked nothing but sincerest admiration. Dr. Livingstone is about 60 years old, though after he was restored to health, he appeared more like a man who had not passed his 50th year. His hair has a brownish color yet, but is here and there streaked with grey lines over the temples. His whiskers and moustache are very grey. He shaves his chin daily. His eyes, which are hazel, are remarkably bright. He has a sight keen as a hawk's. His teeth alone indicate the weakness of age. The hard fare of Lunda has made havoc in their lines. His form, which soon assumed a stoutish appearance, is a little over the ordinary height, with the slightest possible bow in the shoulders. When walking, he has a firm but heavy tread, like that of an overworked or fatigued man. He is accustomed to wear a naval cap with a semicircular peak, by which he has been identified throughout Africa. His dress, when first I saw him, exhibited traces of patching and repairing, but was scrupulously clean. I was led to believe that Livingstone possessed a splenetic, misanthropic temper. Some have said that he is garrulous, that he is demented, that he has utterly changed from the David Livingstone whom people knew as the Reverend Missionary, that he takes no notes or observations but such as those which no other person could read but himself. And it was reported, before I proceeded to Central Africa, that he was married to an African princess. I respectfully beg to differ with all and each of the above statements. I grant